Okay, am I live? I think I'm live. So, hello everybody. Let me just make sure that I'm live here. What's happening? What's happening? Yeah, I think I'm live. All right. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. What's going on? Can you guys hear me? Let me just make sure. I'm having to toggle back and forth in between you know, windows here because I realized too late that I need another monitor. So, okay, looks like I've got audio everywhere. Sweet. So hello everyone. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm basically going to, well, there were a couple of responses, a couple of videos that I saw that I wanted to make responses to. We've been kind of like doing a series of various like right-wing movements and stuff like that over the last couple of streams, couple of weeks. And I want to continue with that, but I'm hitting a point where the information is becoming a little overwhelming, so I need to organize it a little better. So I want to take some time and actually make it really good instead of just like making up, bullshit, right? I want to take some time and actually write it out and all that stuff. In the meantime, I figure we could do a couple of streams about various things that have happened in the news lately. I wanted to start here actually. There was a story that I thought was funny, right? That I want to share with you guys. So why did I name this one "Fascist Trolls and Liars"? Because that's kind of the theme for today's stream. Is right-wing trolls and fascists and liars and stuff. And the first story that I saw was this, where has to do with Joe Biden and Chick-fil-A. So if you guys remember back in the day, Obama derangement syndrome, right? Like if you've ever heard of that, Obama derangement syndrome, basically what that was all about was the conservatives kind of making up phony baloney stories in order to get angry at Obama for certain things. Dynacat, how you doing? Thanks for joining, Dynacat. So yeah, if you remember right, there was a series of really ridiculous stories in the news all throughout the Obama years. Really dumb things, like they would criticize him for wearing a tan suit, something like that. They would criticize him for getting the wrong kind of mustard on his sandwich, shit like that, right? And you're starting to see the same kind of thing happen with Joe Biden now. There was a story not that long ago about Joe Biden's dog. That seems to be a favorite target of the GOP and the conservatives, saying that apparently his dog bit somebody, blah, 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 whatever, Ben Shapiro attacked Jill Biden, said she wasn't a real doctor, shit like that, right? And it's sort of, why do they have to, this is basically trolling. Controlling at, trolling, like, and it's like you think, like, well, why do they have to come, because there's plenty of things that if you wanted to criticize Barack Obama and Joe Biden specifically, if you wanted to criticize him, you'd think there wouldn't be very many roadblocks there. You think you'd be able to find plenty of things to criticize him about. His support for the military industrial complex, for example, the way he just handled this for example, the way he just handled this flare-up in Israel, versus the Palestinians, like that seems to happen every 20 years or so. There's another push to, Israel pushes against the Palestinians and has to go out and kill several thousand of them, and then nobody says anything, right? And our government, always supports them no matter what happens, no matter how many people they kill, shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, we always sell them the weapons, we never say anything bad against them, no matter how many people end up dead. Stuff like that, you know, or Biden's crime bill, you know, that kind of thing. It's not like Joe Biden is like the best president ever and has no skeletons in his closet. So you would think that if you wanted to attack him, it would be easy to do so. You wouldn't have to attack his dog, right? You wouldn't have to make up bullshit about how his wife isn't a real doctor, that kind of thing, you know. And you say, well, why? Why is it that whenever there's a Democrat in the White House, specifically in the White House, the Republicans kind of just go a little nuts. The conservatives, the Republicans, they go a little nuts and they start criticizing them for the stupidest fucking things. When in real life there was a ton of things to actually criticize them about. You know, for example, you know, speaking of Obama, you know, his support of the drone war, for example, that in and of itself is something that you could even criticize him from the right for that. Or the fact that he used drone strikes to kill American citizens. You know, even if they were terrorists. It's like, kind of doesn't matter. Even if you're a terrorist, you're an American citizen, you still, you know, are subject to the laws of the United States, and you still deserve a trial. You deserve due process of law. You know, the government is not supposed to be able to just murder you because they say you're a terrorist. Right. That happened a couple of times, actually, and Donald Trump did the same thing. You know, like Barack Obama murdered this one guy, like used a drone strike to kill this guy who was an American citizen because he was... And yeah, you know, maybe he was a terrorist, but still, that doesn't mean you get to just fucking kill him. And then Donald Trump did the same thing. Donald Trump did a drone strike and killed the same guy's son, a 16-year-old son, in a drone strike. So it's sort of like, you know, but getting back to this, you know, the derangement syndrome, it's like we're starting to see these sorts of ridiculous stories come out, you know, the same kind of stories that we, you know, the Obama derangement syndrome. We're starting to see the same thing with Joe Biden, you know, Biden derangement syndrome. And one of these stories that really caught my eye was this one here. Let me just turn this on. So sorry, I'm juggling like 6 windows here. So if I screw up momentarily, you know, just yell at me really loud in the chat. So there was one that showed up here. Let me just drag this over. This is, whoa, that's that doesn't look right. Hey, wait a minute. What the hell? What happened? What happened to my Photoshop? Okay. Let me see. It was this one here. Nope, not that one. All right. I keep grabbing the wrong thing. This one. Right wing. There we go. Salon.com. Right-wingers blame Biden for Chick-fil-A sauce shortage. Right? I thought this shit was funny. I don't know. Of all the things that you could blame somebody for, you know, that you could blame a president for, the shortage of fucking chicken McNugget sauce at a restaurant. I guess, you know, it's not McDonald's, but, you know, the shortage of fucking sauce at a restaurant. How the hell would the president of the United States be responsible for that? That doesn't make any sense to me at all. Let's just read a little bit about this, because I thought this shit was funny, and I wanted to share this with people just to illustrate, right? Just to illustrate the dichotomy that we see in criticism between Republican and Democratic administrations. All right. Right-wingers blame Biden for Chick-fil-A sauce shortage. It's just so embarrassing. Chick-fil-A has a sauce shortage, and you want to know why? Because Joe Biden's radical liberal policies. Right? This is not, you know. Here we go. Okay, so, you know, I won't read this entire thing, but, you know, here's just a little bit. We'll just skim over it. Wingnuts pointing the finger at Biden include Senator Ted Cruz, Lauren Boebert, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt, right? This is a tweet from Ted Cruz. Joe Biden is destroying America. All right, let's just open that up here. Because Ted Cruz here, Joe Biden is destroying America because Chick-fil-A has to limit the number of sauces per order for their chicken. Here's Lauren Boebert, supporter of the QAnon conspiracy. She posted this. There's no limit to how awful Biden's America can get. Posting pictures of Chick-fil-A sauce. Right? I mean, this is just, I don't know. A couple of other things. This article, I'll put this down in the things, you guys, if you want to read this. Because it goes on, it talks about a couple of other ridiculous examples from the past. You know, here in 2009, Rush Limbaugh blamed Obama for the death of Michael Jackson, just as an example. The governor of Oklahoma is using this to as a fundraising opportunity. Here's the government of Oklahoma's tweet, you know, asking readers to donate to make sure Chick-fil-A never has another sauce shortage. Right. So I just thought that shit was hilarious. Let me just get rid of that. And I just think, you know, it demonstrates the difference between, you know, in criticism there, because at no time in the past 4 years did any liberal or Democrat or, you know, progressive activist or anybody like that, at no time did anybody ever blame Donald Trump for the shortage of sauces at a restaurant. Never. Right? Never did we didn't blame him for that. You know how right now there was that story about the Russian hacking group that hacked that pipeline, and then there was a gas shortage in the American Southeast, right? And a bunch of people, like a bunch of morons, went out and started stockpiling gas, and then now their cars are fucking catching on fire because they're idiots and they don't know that you're not supposed to fucking do that, right? And then it's like the gas prices went back to normal and everybody was blaming Biden for that. You know, at any time, did anybody ever blame Donald Trump for the price of gas? Not really. The fact that gas went up, gas went down, no. You know, I do remember them blaming Barack Obama for that, for gas being expensive. You know, the truth is the President of the United States does not control gas prices, right? Gas prices are set on an open market. The President of the United States does not control the prices of anything that a public, you know, that a private company sells. You know, not really. I mean, maybe you could argue indirectly the president can control things by putting tariffs on stuff, shit like that. But, you know, it's not like Chick-fil-A sauce is like a fucking imported commodity that comes from like another country that we're paying fucking tariffs on. Right? That's just not, it's the dumbest shit ever. And it just kind of goes to show, like, you know, like, you know, it goes to show the difference in discourse. You know, they'll literally blame a Democratic president for anything, right? And you think, like, well, why? Why are they wasting their time on something as stupid as fucking Chick-fil-A, right? Because, you know, you have to know that Ted Cruz knows that Biden has no fucking influence on Chick-fil-A, you know, Chick-fil-A, whatever, right? I don't think I've ever actually eaten at a Chick-fil-A. There is one in my town, though, but I don't know. I didn't go there because of their, there was a controversy a few years ago about how they treated, you know, gay employees. So after that, I was like, fuck Chick-fil-A. I'm not eating there. But, you know, there is, yeah, he knows that, you know, Biden is not calling up the president of Chick-fil-A and making him raise his prices or making him cut down his fucking, his, like, supply of sauce. That's the dumbest shit ever, but they're doing it anyway. And you think, like, well, why are they doing that? Why are they focusing on stupid shit like this, right? And it's kind of the same reason why they're focusing on dumbass culture war crap to begin with, because they don't actually have any real criticisms of Joe Biden, or they didn't really have any real criticisms of Barack Obama either. because really the policies that Obama and Biden support are basically the same shit that Republicans support. He's just better at it. You know what I mean? Like, it's basically like, first off, the shit that Biden or Obama supports are either really popular, and the Republicans can't criticize it. Things like the ACA. It's either something that's really popular like that, and they know if they criticize that, then it makes them look bad because their own voters like it, or else it's shit that Republicans support. Things like militarism in the Middle East, right? Their drone wars, stuff like that. You know, like for example, Biden is not a supporter of Medicare for all, for example, right? So that, you know, while that's bullshit and that sucks, and people on the left do not like him for that, that also means that Republicans, people on the right, can't criticize him from that angle because they also don't support universal, you know, Medicare for all as well, right? So how are they going to criticize him? Like, what, claim that he supports some shit that he doesn't support? You know, maybe that's like, maybe their constituents are stupid enough to believe that shit to begin with. And, you know, yeah, they are, because, you know, you keep hearing this baloney about, you know, they're trying to push the Biden as a socialist angle really hard. But the thing is, people aren't buying it. If you look at his approval ratings, you know, even other Republicans aren't buying it. Because he's not a socialist. He's essentially, you know, left of, he's slightly left of center, if even that. You know, like that's like being very, like, gracious with it, saying that Biden is left of center. Like, I would say, like, barely left of center, you know. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, there's actually been some really good things that he's done over the last 4 months that I really, really like. Positions that he's come out on that I think are awesome, you know, especially environmentally. That's great, you know, the Keystone Pipeline, shit like that. But then, you know, but then there's other stances that I don't like. You know, Biden, for example, cancels the Keystone Pipeline, but then he, like, you know, there was another pipeline that he just green lights, right? So it's like, it's not consistent, you know what I mean? Like, it's not completely, like, I think it was like a Russian pipeline, I just read about it the other day. You just, like, completely just greenlit it without any, you know, environmental review or any shit like that. So it's like, you know, he's not the most progressive president ever. He's not, you know, and I think we understood what we were getting when we voted for him. You know, we understood we weren't getting the best thing ever. We were getting, you know, literally the guy that wasn't going to devolve the United States into a fascist state. That's what we voted for. That's what I voted for. I voted for the guy that wasn't going to essentially destroy America, right? And I think, you know, seeing what happened after that in January 6th and shit like that, I think that kind of bared out. We did, you know. So I just wanted to share that story to start out with, because I think that's a really good example of the kind of lies we're going to be talking about here moving forward, right? Because my next thing, how long we've been streaming? We started at about, yeah, we started right at 11:30, right? God, have I been talking for 20 minutes already? So I wanted to start off with that because I'm afraid I'm going to have to apologize to you guys, because one of the videos that I want to talk about here is actually Ted Cruz. It involves Ted Cruz, and I know that everybody hates Ted Cruz. Right. But about a week ago, Ted Cruz got up on TV, you know, they were debating the We the People Act, right? And he basically went on this 6-minute tirade where he just lied his ass off. And the thing is that, you know, Republicans always lie. Politicians in general always lie, but Republicans are really good at it. And Ted Cruz is a master, you know, he's like a master study in how to lie to people, right? But this particular little tirade that he gave off is filled with so many lies that you know, and I know that this was kind of in the news for a little while, but here's the thing that happens with this stuff like this, right? Is that it'll be in the news, and then people will talk about it, and then it'll just disappear, and people will forget, and they'll forget, you know, that this politician, like, they'll forget this kind of stuff, and it's like, you want to make sure, you know, like, I really, really think that if everybody actually remembered every time Ted Cruz, you know, if people actually remembered what this guy's all about when it came time to vote, then nobody sane would vote for his ass. Maybe he'd still win. Republicans are, you know, they don't really care about the truth. But, you know, this is one thing I can do in order to spread awareness that Ted Cruz is a lying, shit-faced weasel, is to cover in my live streams, you know, one of his ridiculous fucking speeches about how he and like, okay, so here, I'm kind of rambling here. But let me show this, all right? So, let's see. Where is Chrome? Did I accidentally close the window? Oh, shit, I might have closed it. That means I'm going to have to go back. Oh, wait, here it is. Okay, Ted Cruz explodes. All right, let me just... I'm finagling things here. There we go. Okay, so you should be seeing it on the screen now, right? On the lower right there. So let me just make that a little bigger for you guys. This is Ted Cruz. He's talking about the We the People Act, which is, you know, HR 1 and then SB 1. So, you know, which was the basically the first thing passed in the new Congress. And literally every word out of this guy's mouth is a lie. So I want to talk about this because, seriously, I'm not even kidding. Every single fucking thing this guy says is a lie. And this is one of those, like, you know, methods that people use when they debate or when they, like, you know, they use that sort of Gish Gallop attack where they just sort of pile it on, you know, lie after lie after lie after lie. And it kind of overwhelms your defenses, right? And by the time you get to the end, you sort of forget what he said at the beginning, but you get an overall feeling, right? And what happens when somebody does that, when somebody Gish Gallops, right, is that it makes you feel like they're more intelligent than they actually are. Because you don't have to actually, you know, in order to convince people, right, especially when it's people who don't do research, when it's people who don't actually fact check things, like, you know, people like Republicans, right, you really don't have to say anything that has any truth or facts to it or has any substance. You don't have to actually say anything that makes sense even. All you really have to do is sound like you know what you're talking about, right? And that's what politicians do all the time. Politicians, you know, constantly lie. You know, they constantly change their stories, go back on things, right? But what makes a politician shifty? You know, what turns your opinion against a politician, right, is when they get caught, like when they're a hypocrite. You know, they get caught, like, you know, when they get caught in a lie and they handle it bad. You know, not just getting caught in a lie, because just getting caught in a lie isn't good enough, right? But, you know, every once in a while you'll get a you know, a reporter or something that'll try to confront a politician with, like, statements they changed or whatever. And it's the way the politician handles it. And if they handle it in such a way that it makes it look like they know what they're talking about and that they're, like, consistent and, you know, that kind of thing, then they'll be able to you know, they'll be able to shoulder that, you know, they'll be able to, like, knock that away and it won't become a scandal. And that's how they do it. And that's what Ted Cruz does. He just bullshits, and he bullshits in such a way that it makes it sound like he knows what he's talking about, even when every fucking thing the guy says that comes out of his mouth is a lie. And it won't matter. It won't matter because the people that vote for him are not going to fact check any of this shit, right? So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and hit play, and there's going to be a lot of stopping and me, like, let me just make this a little bit bigger. I hate to subject you guys to Ted Cruz, but I think this shit's important, right? So let me make it a little bit bigger, and then you know, I'll comment and shit like that. Okay, and let me know if you can't hear it. Let me know. Okay.
This legislation, I believe, is the most radical legislation the Senate has considered in the 9 years I've been here, and it is the most dangerous legislation pending before the United States Congress. You know, I listened to the speeches this morning. I listened to Senator Schumer's speech, where he recounted...
By the way, just to reiterate, so we're talking about the We the People Act, right? Which is we spoke about it a little bit in some of our streams from last week, right? And you know, the We the People Act is a voting rights act, right? Which basically does a lot to get rid of voter suppression, right? So it's funny how he characterizes this as the most dangerous legislation that he's ever seen. You know, it's like it's legislation designed to help people vote, right? And he considers that dangerous. And you go, why? Why do politics? You know, why do Republicans in general think that it's dangerous for people to vote? It's because the more people that vote, the less likely they are to win. Okay, so that's the first thing right there, right off the bat. You know, Ted Cruz is misleading people. But anyway, let's continue a little further on here. Okay, this might take a little while, just to let you guys know. I mean, just to give you some forewarning, right? I'll try not to stop at every 2.5 seconds, but all right, let's just continue.
This country's shameful history of Jim Crow laws, and he's right. Jim Crow laws were bigoted, racist, and disenfranchised millions of people. And it is worth remembering that those Jim Crow laws were drafted by Democrats, they were implemented by Democrats, and they kept Democrats in power. Now, today's talking point, repeated in the media, is that was the Democrats of yesterday, not today. Well, today the Democrats are doing it again. This legislation, to use a phrase...
Okay, we need to stop. All right. That right there is Ted Cruz lying like a fucking dog. All right. So basically blaming Jim Crow on Democrats, right? There is a kernel of truth to that. Okay, because it is true that back, you know, Jim Crow was started by Democrats. Okay, Jim Crow actually was instituted by Democrats, and Democrats benefited from Jim Crow, right? But, you know, he's lying by omission here, because what he's not saying is that Jim Crow was, you know, the Democrats during that time were the conservative party, right? Democrats were the conservatives. Democrats were back in the, you know, early 20th century all the way to maybe the 1960s or so, you know, were basically more ideologically aligned with today's Republicans than they were with today's Democrats, right? And it's true, you know, because this is a talking point you get all the time from Republicans. They say things like, well, you know, Martin Luther King was a Republican, and the Republicans were against slavery, and the Republicans were for voting rights, and the Republicans were all this. Yeah, they were. They were, you know, 70 years ago, right? What about today, all right? Because what they're not mentioning is that, you know, the parties basically shifted, you know, they shifted ideologically, right? And this is, you know, this is not some made-up bullshit conspiracy. This is actually true, you know, the Southern strategy, right? And, you know, conservatives and Republicans and shit, they really hate it when you bring up the Southern strategy, because they'll deny it until the end of time. And the reason why they deny it is because it's true. It's because there was an ideological shift, and that ideological shift, it started not just with civil rights in the 1960s, the 1963 Civil Rights Act, or was it 64? I don't know. It didn't just start there. It actually started before that. You know, it started way back. I mean, even there were like instances way back in 1948. Right. In 1948, the Democratic Party platform was in support of civil rights, right? from Harry S. Truman, who was the nominee for president, right? Who eventually became president, right? And there was support for civil rights in the Democratic platform, right? The reason why there was support for civil rights in the Democratic platform in 1948 is because during World War II, right, one of the things that fucking Roosevelt, one of the deals he cut with the black civil rights leaders was that after the war, if you guys don't cause any protests or civil unrest at home during the war, then after the war things are going to be different. That was one of the deals that, because that was, there was a civil rights movement back in the 30s and the 40s, right? And it was like, we were in the middle of this massive war, and that was the deal. The deal was, okay, we'll things we're gonna address this once the war is over, right? And there were certain things like, for example, that's why the army was integrated and stuff in the 40s. Okay. Yeah, okay, Dynacat, yeah, you're right. It was split north and south, but still, it was mainly in the south. The Southern Democrats were the ones that were, in support of segregation, for example, stuff like that, right? And they were highly conservative in the South, And in 1948, once the Democratic Party platform started supporting civil rights, right, a bunch of Democrats split off from that. The conservative Democrats started to break away. They called them Dixiecrats, right? And chief among those was a guy. In 1948, their nominee for president was Strom Thurmond, who was also a Democrat. Okay, so if you guys remember Strom Thurmond, Strom Thurmond was highly, highly conservative. He was an anti-segregation. I mean, he was in support of segregation. Strom Thurmond, right? Highly racist, fucking like white supremacist guy. And Strom Thurmond served for like decades after that. Even he kept getting reelected over and over and over. And I think he finally died in like 2005 or something, like at the age of 104. Right? Which just kind of goes to show that there really is no justice in the world when, some racist segregationist piece of shit gets to live to be 104 and die happy, having accomplished everything he fucking ever wanted in his entire life, when somebody like Martin Luther King Jr. or Malcolm X, someone who stands up for the plight of oppressed peoples, gets murdered and nobody does anything about it. Just a little side note there. But anyway, just to kind of illustrate how the system is set up to benefit the powerful, and the powerful people usually end up being white. I don't know. So yeah, it wasn't just, but basically so that's when it kind of started happening, and then the 1963 Civil Rights Act happened, and that pushed a lot of more conservative Democrats out of the party, and then some of them even switched over to being Republicans. Some people like Ronald Reagan, for example. Ronald Reagan used to be a Democrat, right? And he switched to the Republican Party because of civil rights, Ronald Reagan, when he was elected, had all kinds of dog whistles and shit to the, conservative far right. I mean, things like, I think when he started his campaign, for the 1980 election, he like started his campaign in the same town where 3 civil rights activists were murdered. I'd have to look that up. I can't remember exactly the name of the town, but there were plenty of dog whistles coming out of Ronald Reagan. Things like for example, the notion of the welfare queen that we know and love today comes from Ronald Reagan. Right. All kinds of racist dog whistles there. So yeah, he used to be a Democrat, right? And it was like, this is, and this is not a conspiracy theory. This isn't something that, some wacky, some guy fucking with a tinfoil hat is wearing. This is like actual true shit where we have like basically, Republican and conservative politicians admitting this shit. That was a strategy they went with. After civil rights, they decided they were going to appeal to basically conservative, racist white Southerners to get elected. And that's why now, whereas back in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, the all of the southern states were essentially democratic states. They were all solid blue. Now they're all solid red, right? And that line, it follows almost follows the Mason-Dixon line. It's like the old Confederacy. You can identify the old Confederacy pretty easy looking at any electoral college map from the last 6 or 7 elections. And every once in a while there'll be a state that flips. Maybe Florida might flip. This time Georgia flipped, right? Something like that. And that's one of the reasons why Republicans and all over the country are putting in all of these draconian anti-voter laws, voter suppression laws, especially in the South, because, that line is starting to crumble a little bit. You get Georgia, for example, right? Starting to crumble. Texas starting to get a little purple, right? Florida is now a swing state. Florida didn't used to be a swing state forever, right? For like, 20 years, Florida was solidly red. And even though it's gone red in all of the, it hasn't really gone blue in any elections recently, but it's still, it's got a good chance of, going blue and everything. It's a battleground state now, like that's why they're flipping out. That's why they're putting in all these laws, like, like in Georgia, where it's like illegal to give someone a drink of water when they're standing in line for fucking 12 hours and shit to go vote, right? And this is what Ted Cruz is fucking complaining about right now, saying that, because the We the People Act stops them from doing that, stops them from taking away people's ability to vote. And basically he knows the only way that his party is going to be able to win any elections in the future is by preventing people from fucking voting. So, I don't know, I just think that shit's funny. It's like, it's funny, and it's funny, and it's sad because, he basically just lied to everybody's face right there when he just said that. I know we just went off on this like 15-minute tangent over like one sentence that Ted Cruz said, but there was a lot of lies packed into that one into that one sentence, where he said Democrats supported Jim Crow, and now they're doing it again. There's a lot to unpack in that. So that's why. Anyway, let's continue here. Sorry, I know I'm like rambling a bit, but it pisses me off to see this. To see this and then to see nobody respond, to see nobody push back, like, it makes me angry, and I feel like I gotta fucking say something. So anyway, let's move on.
That has been popularized on the media recently is Jim Crow 2.0. This legislation would disenfranchise millions of Americans. Many of us are referring to this.
All right, can't let that go. This legislation would disenfranchise millions of Americans. How exactly? How exactly? That's another just blatant, straight up lie. This legislation, fucking the We the People Act does the opposite of disenfranchising people. It enfranchises people. Okay? It gives people the ability to vote. It helps people to vote, right? It does the opposite of what he's claiming. And here's the thing is that you'll notice that he says that and then he just moves on. That's another tactic that, when somebody's bullshitting, right, gish galloping and bullshitting, that's what they'll just state it and then just move on. And it's like, he doesn't have to provide any proof. Okay, that's what we got to understand. It's like, it doesn't matter to him or to his constituents if it's true. All that matters is that he said it, and people are going to now believe it because he said it. Because, Ted Cruz is an important man. He's a senator, And he wouldn't be a senator if he didn't know what he was, if he wasn't good at his thing. People wouldn't vote for him if he wasn't good at it, obviously, so that must mean he must be saying the truth. He must be looking out for me, blah, 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 blah. Right? And, he's talking right here to his constituents, right? Everything, like, and that's another thing you gotta remember. That's another sign that a politician is a shifty piece of shit that doesn't give a fuck about anybody but themselves, is when they talk, they're not addressing the nation, right? Or the things they say, are not like, like they don't care about things that are true because they're true. They care about what they can get right out of people. And that's like, the little marquee image that I chose for this video, right, was Ted Cruz making phone banking calls for Donald Trump. I chose that on purpose, right, because it shows the kind of person Ted Cruz is. Okay, if you remember, all throughout 2015, 2016, right, before the election, Ted Cruz was the guy that almost, he came in second place, right? And he really hated Donald Trump, if you remember. He didn't like him. He went all the way to the end and then finally had to drop out because he just didn't have enough votes, right? He went as far as to, like, to choose a running mate. That's how far Ted Cruz went in that election, right? And Donald Trump called him names, called him lying Ted, all this other stuff. Donald Trump insulted his wife. Donald Trump implied that Ted Cruz's father had something to do with the fucking Kennedy assassination, right? Called his father a fucking, like, criminal murderer. Called his wife ugly, right? Called him names, bullied him. That was Donald Trump's, campaigning method. That's what he does. He just fucking bullies people and makes fun of them, right? And because Republicans and conservatives are assholes, they went for it. That's really, Donald Trump is not a very hard person to figure out. He's a fucking asshole. And the reason why people voted for him is because the people that voted for him, they're fucking assholes too. Okay? And it's not that hard to figure out. Ted Cruz is not that, he's not as tough. He's not as big of an asshole as Donald Trump. He's much more wormy, much more slimy, much more wormy. And he basically decided, hey, I lost, and the only way I'm going to have a political future is if I suck up to Donald Trump, and that's why he was making phone calls for him, right? Because he's a fucking little beta bitch. And I hate using that term beta male, because I think all of that, like, men's rights, red pill shit is a load of fucking crap, and it sucks. But it definitely describes Ted Cruz very well. He was Donald Trump's bitch for 4 years because he's because he won't stand up for, a slimy little fucking surrender toad. That's what he is, right? And that's why I chose it. I chose it because, because after all the chips were down, after all the shit that he talked about, I remember there was a video where Ted Cruz got up and just went off on Donald Trump and was just yelling at him, like talking to a reporter. Is like, let me tell you about Donald Trump. I wish I should have dug that up before this video here, because I remember it was like right when, like, it was basically right around the time Ted Cruz realized he was going to lose, and like Trump was calling him names and shit. And I think it was right after he insulted Cruz's wife, and Ted Cruz like had this sort of like, let me tell you about Donald Trump. He's a slime bag, blah, 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 right? Yelling at him and shit. And then, like, 3 months later, he's fucking making phone calls for him. Right? And it's because Ted Cruz doesn't actually give a shit. He doesn't have integrity. That's what I think, when people realize you're a slime bag, right? If you're going to say something, you got to stand by it. You can change your mind, whatever, if you're presented with, better evidence, blah, blah, blah. Of course, yeah, no one's going to, like, say that shit, right? But if you're, like, if you're, like, yelling at one guy 1 minute and then turning around and kissing the guy's ass the next minute, people got to wonder why. It's like, well, why? Why did you do that? Because he realized that this was, what he could get from Donald Trump. That's what he did. He immediately pivoted around, said, okay, this is how I'm going to survive. I'm going to survive by kissing Trump's ass. And if I play my cards right, maybe I can get his fans to like me after Donald Trump loses, right, in 2020. That's what he fucking thought, all right? Because he's an opportunistic little piece of shit. Okay. Kind of like, another example of that, Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy, is the current, House Minority Leader, right? And if you remember, after January 6th, this story comes out about how he called Donald Trump to get him to fucking, do something to stop the fucking riot. And then Donald Trump, turned into Kevin McCarthy and said to him, in so many words, I'm paraphrasing, I think he said something like, well, these people seem to care about the election way more than you do, Kevin. And then, Kevin McCarthy was, yelling at Trump, oh, who the fuck do you think you're talking to? Stuff like that. And then, a few months later, now Kevin McCarthy is kissing Trump's ass, right? He was mad at him. He was mad at him when fucking his life was in danger, when he was afraid that, Trump's deranged fucking supporters were gonna break down the doors and drag him outside, hang him from a fucking telephone pole, right? But when it becomes politically advantageous to him, he turns around and kisses Trump's ass. Ted Cruz, and that's, there's your perfect fucking example. Another example of slimy ass politician just acting in their own interest. And that's Ted Cruz. And that's Ted Cruz doing this right here. Right here, Ted Cruz is doing the exact same thing right here, lying to our faces about shit that is demonstrably untrue, because he doesn't actually care about the truth, and he doesn't actually care about voting rights or voting integrity or his constituents, right? He cares about getting elected, right? So it's frustrating as fuck. So let's just move on. Oy, oy, oy. Yeah, Dynacat, exactly. In other words, what's my vote worth if you let some liberal come along and vote the other way? Exactly. Exactly true. This is how they figure they're going to win elections now. They're going to win elections by preventing other people from voting. Right. So let's move on, because we're only 20 seconds into this shit. And there's 5 minutes left. And I'll stop interrupting so often, but let's go on.
Legislation is the Corrupt Politicians Act. Because it would do, Senator Schumer talked about politicians picking their constituents. That's what this legislation does. This legislation is designed to ensure that Democrats never lose another election.
All right. Two things we got to talk about there. All right. This legislation is designed to ensure, to allow politicians to pick their constituents, number one. That's something that Republicans do all the time, right? The way they do that is through gerrymandering, okay? Gerrymandering is when you draw a district in such a way that it squeezes all of one voting population into one district, whereas the rest of the other voting populations get multiple districts, and then that way you basically get to send more people to the House. It's mainly done for the mainly done for the House of Representatives, right? And it's done that way, so that way, even though your side gets less votes overall, you get to send more people and you get more representation in the House, you get more votes in the House, right? Republicans do that all the time. In fact, really, gerrymandering is the only reason why Republicans had majorities during the Trump years, right? So that's something that happens constantly. So he's lying his ass off. He doesn't actually give a shit about that too. You got to remember, because that's a practice that his party engages in, right? And when was the last time you saw Ted Cruz say any shit about gerrymandering? Never. The other thing, it says, oh, it's designed so that Democrats never lose another election. Well, that's kind of telling too, because all this legislation actually does, all the We the People Act actually does, is help people vote. So if more people voting means Democrats never lose, whose problem is that? All right? Because, we're supposed to live in a fucking democracy, are we not? Is this not supposed to be a democratic republic that we live in, right? You know, where the people go and they vote, and their representatives, they vote in representatives who are then supposed to make laws on their behalf. Is that not the system of government that we have? Right. Well, how do you give a mandate to our form of government? Right. Like, if our politician, if Ted Cruz passes a law, right, why should I obey that law? Okay, what's the force what's the mandate behind that law? What's you know, the force of legality, right? What's that legality based on? It's based on the fact that he's an elected representative, that the majority of people in his district voted for him, right? And thus he has a mandate in order to create laws, right? And those laws are just, you know, based on the fact that the majority of people are represented by this person. That's what the mandate's supposed to be, right? Well, at what point does it become, when the majority of people are not represented, right, by the elected official? At what point does that law become, unjust, right? That's what we're starting to see right now. Right? This is what the Republicans want. This is what they want. They want the people, the people that the less number of votes get cast for to actually win, so that they can pass laws that benefit a smaller segment of the population. Right? Rich people, rich people, white people. I mean, let's be honest. Okay, even though there are plenty of ways in which class intersects race there, and I'm not gonna lie, there's plenty of rich black people, plenty of rich minorities, whatever, but the overwhelming majority of them happen to all be of the same race. Let's not leave that part out, right? And so these are the laws that this is what his party is this is what they want. They want to be able to pass laws for that small segment of the population at the expense of the rest of us, even though we vote for their opposition. That's what he fucking wants, okay? So it's like, if he's gonna sit here and say shit like, oh man, if he's gonna sit there and he's gonna say shit like, yeah, this ensures Democrats never fucking lose. The only reason Democrats would never fucking lose because of this legislation is because more people vote for him. So it's misleading as fuck. Okay, moving on.
This legislation would register millions of illegal aliens to vote. It is intended to do that. It is intended to do that because Democrats have made the decision that millions of illegal aliens voting are likely to vote for Democrats.
That is a straight up lie. That is a 100% bald-faced, pure, grade A baloney lie right there. The We the People Act does not allow illegal immigrants to vote, right? There are no provisions within the We the People Act for non-citizens to vote at all, okay? You cannot vote if you're not a citizen, right? That's the law. That's been the law forever. There's never really been a time in the country's history ever when someone who was not a citizen was allowed to vote. That's just pure bullshit. It's pure bullshit, and nothing. He couldn't point to anything in that proposal, in the bill, that would even allow that at all in the slightest. Okay, completely fucking, but it's fear-mongering bullshit. That's like catering right there, what he just said. Catering to the conspiracy theory. The illegal aliens, lost Trump the election conspiracy theory. Which, Republicans and conservatives and shit always bring up every single time. Every time they lose an election. Even in 2016, even when they won in 2016, there were conspiracy theories of busloads of illegal aliens driving around California voting for Hillary Clinton. Shit like that. As a way to explain Donald Trump's popular vote loss. Because he lost the popular vote. And the way they explained that is because they had illegal aliens driving around, and they were bussing them in, voting for Hillary Clinton. Which is fucking ridiculous because it's like, why would you put them all in California? Wouldn't you, like, if you were going to steal the election like that, wouldn't you, like, bring some of those people to other states so that you can get more electoral votes? It's the dumbest shit ever, right? It's dumb as hell. It makes no fucking sense. And it's just basically just fear-mongering bullshit, And look at his face. He's lying to you right there. He's just said that he knows it's a lie. That's the thing that you got to remember. All the shit that Ted Cruz is saying, he knows that this is all lies. He's saying it anyway, right? Because he's a fucking piece of shit. That's why he's saying it. So anyway, let's move on.
This would register vast numbers of criminals and felons to vote, because Democrats have made the decisions that criminals and felons are likely to vote for Democrats.
That's another lie. Now, there is a little bit of truth here because there are provisions in this bill that would make it so that ex-felons could vote. What I got to say about that is, first off, why not? I mean, I understand that no one's going to support the ability for someone to vote who is currently incarcerated, right? Although I think that's bullshit too. I think if you're in prison, how come you can't vote when you're in prison? You should be allowed to. You're still a fucking citizen, are you not? But still, I'm not gonna die on that hill because I know that's never gonna fucking happen, right? But once you get out of prison, how come you can't vote once you get out of prison, right? You went in, you did your time, you paid your debt to society, and now you're supposed to, when you get out of prison, you're supposed to be reformed. That's the whole point of throwing someone in prison, right? Is so that when they get out of prison, they can go back to being a normal fucking person. That's what prison is for, right? Prison is to remove dangerous people from society so that they don't hurt somebody else, right? And while they're removed, you're supposed to help them adjust, so that you don't get recidivism, right? So that they don't end up going back to fucking prison when they just get out. That's the whole point. Well, once you go through that process, you should be allowed to. How come you can't vote again after that? You just went through. I mean, it basically means that once you make this mistake, that's it. You're gone forever. Forget it. Don't bother trying to participate in civil society ever again. But the real reason they do that, of course, is because more minorities go to prison. That's the real reason why. The real reason why that, conservatives and Republicans and shit don't want to give ex-cons the right to vote is because there's because of, the fact that most people that go to prison, the majority of them are minorities, right? And minorities just happen to usually vote for, Democrats. That's what it is. Okay. And it's because, and the reasons for those are varied, institutional racism in one respect, right? Generational poverty in another respect, right? There's lots of different reasons why, the prison population is overrepresented with minorities, right? And, I'm not trying to excuse any of that either. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong or there's an excuse, whatever, but that's the truth. We need to face reality. If we're ever going to try to address and fix problems like these, then we need to address the actual real problems, right? Well, one of the reasons why minorities are overrepresented in the prison population is because their right to vote is suppressed. Right? That's one of the contributing factors to these people going to prison. Because you can't vote, you're not represented, right? Your interests don't get addressed by the government that's supposed to be helping you. And, as a consequence, your demographic suffers because of that, economically, right? People who have jobs usually don't steal. Okay, this is the big unspoken of truth when it comes to crime. Okay, when it comes to, thievery and drug dealing, shit like that, you know, the truth is nobody really wants to deal drugs, right? Nobody wants to steal, you know. I mean, most sane people, obviously. There's always going to be some people who are just fucking, you know, scumbags, right? You know, you'll never get rid of crime completely. There's always going to be some people, whether, you know, and they'll, it doesn't matter what their race is. It doesn't even matter what their social economic strata is, right? Plenty of rich people steal as well. But when they do it legally. It's still fucking thievery, right? But still, you know, there's always going to be some segment of the population who breaks the law, obviously, right? But the majority of people who are in prison are not white-collar criminals who are running scams, shit like that, blah, 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 blah. The majority of people who are in prison are small-time, you know, thieves, drug dealers, things like that. People who got involved in crime because it's like the only thing they had to survive, right? Because if they fucking, you know, you come from a place where there's no jobs and you got to make money somehow and you're not going to be able to pay your rent and get medicine for your grandma, shit like that, when you're working at fucking Burger King, right? So you got to make money, and it's like, well, hey, this guy will pay me fucking, you know, $300 a day and shit just to be a lookout to make sure that no cops show up when he's dealing. And before you know it, you're fucking in prison for 20 years because of, you know, some shit went down, whatever. That's what happens. You know, people get involved in this stuff, right? Because they feel like they don't have a choice, you know? Because that's like, you know, when it comes to crime, you know, no one's born a criminal. And people who are criminals do not think that they're like, you know, doing anything wrong. Okay? It's like, you know, don't hate the player, hate the game. All right? Seriously, you know. So it's fucking, so how come, you know, how come when somebody goes through all that shit and they get caught, they should be allowed to vote. They should be allowed to vote. They should be able to try to build a life where they can participate in civil society. You know, like not being able to vote is sort of like the biggest indicator that, you know, you don't belong here. You know, it's like, okay, you can work here, you can pay taxes, but when it comes time to actually having your hand in the decision making, no, we don't want to talk to you. We don't want to know about you. We don't give a fuck about you, right? You do what we say. That's kind of what it is, you know. That's the message that gets sent when you're not allowed to fucking vote, right? And this is why, yeah, this is why, you know, Republicans specifically do not like it when minorities vote, you know, for multiple reasons. You know, number one reason being that they vote for their opposition, and the other reason being, you know, obviously because of their race. And that factors a lot into it too. Even today, even in the year 2021, anyone who says that race is not a factor when it comes to voting suppression, you know, voter suppression, is fooling themselves. Because it definitely fucking is. All right. Anyway, moving on. Sorry, I know we're moving. Hey, what's up, Lewis? I jog. I know we're, goddamn, what is it? It's 12:30 already. Has it been an hour? Damn. Okay, moving on. I know we're only at a minute and 52 seconds in here, but dude, this guy is packing in so much bullshit into just like 6 minutes and that's the problem when you gish galop like that too, is that it takes forever to respond to it, so no one ever does. Anyway, moving on.
This legislation strikes down virtually every voter integrity law adopted at the state level. Voter ID laws. Over 70% of Americans support voter ID laws. By the way, over 60% of African Americans in this country support voter ID laws. 29 states have voter ID laws on the books. What does this legislation do? Strikes them all down. Says it's illegal for any state to have a voter ID law. Ballot harvesting.
Yeah, he's correct there. Okay. I think that's kind of telling too, where he says, first off, this strikes down every voter integrity law. You know, he's putting a lie, he's lying there as well. You know, these voter integrity laws that he's talking about are the voter suppression laws that are being passed all around the country. You know, we kind of talked about this a couple of streams ago as well, right? There are currently, I wrote it down here, 843 different bills in 47 states to limit voting rights in one way or another that are currently happening. Currently being proposed around the country, and about 9 of them have passed so far. Excuse me. The most famous being, of course, the one in Georgia. That's the one where, like, you're not allowed to give somebody a glass of water when they're waiting in line for fucking 12 hours, right? That's the one, like, but there's been other ones, Texas, Iowa, Utah, right? These are all states, and they all have the same, just a quick little, aside on this. They all have kind of similar provisions. The most famous, the most common one between all of them is limiting who can get an absentee ballot, a vote by mail ballot, right? And also limiting the number of drop-off boxes. That's something that all of them do, right? In Texas and in Iowa and in Utah, right? How is that like voter integrity? See, the way that they phrase it, it makes it sound like, all he has to do is just say it in a confident way. These are voter integrity laws. How is it voter integrity to prevent somebody from getting a mail-in ballot? Right? That doesn't make any sense. How does it promote voter integrity to take away drop-off boxes, to limit the number of drop-off boxes per county to 1? 1 box per county, like, Los Angeles County is gigantic. Where I live, Los Angeles County, fucking massive. I live on the northern end of this, right? It goes all the way, it's like, 100 miles, right? And let's say the drop-off box was in fucking Alhambra or something. That's like 80 miles from where I live. And I'd have to drive all the fuck way out there. Texas is even bigger than California. Some of the counties in Texas are just massive, especially rural counties, right? And this is something that I don't think they understand. I don't think the Republicans understand that this is going to fuck them when it comes to their voters that live out in the country, the rural areas, right? Because these are people that, always vote by mail, and they're not going to drive 50 miles to go vote, right? This is going to fuck them up. Of course, you know what you're going to see? You're going to see amendments and shit that protect them. That's what's going to happen, right? There'll be all these different little amendments that come on saying, oh yeah, 1 drop-off box in every county, except for this county, which is like, out in the country. But yeah, in the cities and the urban areas where all the black people live, yeah, only one box allowed. That's what's going to fucking happen, right? But still, it's like, how does that promote voter integrity? It's just the way that, the way that he framed it right there, right? And all of his voters are going to, like, see that and be like, yeah, this is voter integrity. We can't have those damn illegal aliens voting. It's obscene, almost, right? Literally, goddamn. And then he's talking about, voter ID laws, right? He's right. That's actually true. 75% of the country actually does support voter ID, right? And that also does include minorities. Black people in particular also support voter ID laws, right? And that's bullshit. I think it sucks. I think it's bullshit. I think it shouldn't be allowed, but that's what the people want, right? But you can do it in such a way that it doesn't disenfranchise people, right? So how does voter ID laws disenfranchise people? It's not the fact that you require an ID, it's the type of ID that you require. That's how you disenfranchise somebody. So you say, okay, it can be a driver's license, but it has to be a driver's license with a certain stamp on it, right? And if you don't get this stamp, if you don't have this like, for example, in California, you can get a driver's license, and if your driver's license can be a real ID, right? And if it doesn't have the real ID hologram on it, then you can't use it as a federal ID. So when it comes time for voting, luckily there's no ID requirement in California, but if there were, I wouldn't be able to use my driver's license for it. I'd have to bring a passport or some shit, right? That's how you do it. Well, first off, that limits who can get that ID, right? Because just so happens that older people, right, students, and poor people who don't have cars are less likely to have a driver's license. Because why would you need a driver's license if you don't have a car? If you don't go anywhere, most of them would have something like a state ID, right? Well, so what do? You make it so that your state ID doesn't work as a real ID. And that's what you're seeing in places like Texas, right? I can't remember exactly. I think it was Texas where you can't use a student ID to vote with, but you can use a gun registration card. I think it was Texas, right? That's how it's set up in order to disenfranchise people, because you just use the IDs that the minorities and your opposition, the IDs that they would have, you just make those IDs not applicable, and then the ones that your people have, like fucking gun voting, gun registration cards, right? You say, yeah, you can vote with that. It's bullshit, right? One thing the We the People Act actually does do is that it says, okay, well, if you can't get an ID, then you can just get I have it written down here. It allows you to get sign a piece of paper, right, under the penalty of perjury, attesting to your ID. So then basically you sign something under so you can go, right, and what it is that they would have you sign a statement, right, saying that you're able to vote, you're legally able to vote, right? And if you're not, this is something that you can go to jail for. If you lie on it, you can go to prison, right? So that's the way that they would that's what's in the Real ID Act, right? I mean, not the Real ID, the We the People Act, right? In order to get around that. And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with making someone basically swear under the penalty of prison time that they can vote, right? Because you can always investigate it afterwards, and if the guy was lying, he goes to prison, right? And his vote gets thrown out. So what's the problem? I'm pretty sure, Republicans and shit are always happy to throw fucking people in prison. I mean, what are they afraid of? Are they afraid that busloads of illegal aliens from China are going to show up and then just sign phony baloney papers and get away with it? Well, you can always audit the fucking election afterwards. You can use computers to match up if these people actually live where they say they live and are who they say they are. And if you find a discrepancy, investigate further, right? Verify that they don't exist and throw out that vote. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's what we do today, right? And this type of voting fraud is not a problem. It's literally not a problem. That's the other thing you got to remember. Voter ID laws, right, are a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. Because there are no people that like the number of people who vote illegally in that fashion. It was it's something I saw an article on it a little while ago. It was something like under 400 since 1982. In all the elections since 1982, where millions upon millions of votes have been cast, right? In that time, there's been something like 380 some odd instances of voter fraud in this fashion. It's not a problem. That's nothing, right? That's it's fear-mongering bullshit that Republicans have made up, right, as a way for them to explain their fucking election losses, and they're trying to turn it into a method by which they can suppress votes. It's complete fucking total horseshit. And unfortunately, people have bought into it, and it just kind of goes to show there too that that kind of messaging resonates with people. All you have to do is you just have to say a lie over and over enough times. We need voter ID laws. You just have to say that over and over and over. repeat that lie enough and enough people believe it, and now we have 75% of the fucking country that actually buys it. That's why this shit is dangerous. This is why we need to, like, you know, we need to actually address it when people like Ted Cruz lie to you. You know what I mean? When they like fucking, like right now, you know, he can't be allowed to get away with it. You know what I mean? Like without somebody saying something. You know, and it really, to be honest, needs to be somebody out there with, you know, I mean, there's two ways to go about it. It's either like you get somebody out there with a huge audience that, like, you know, addresses it when somebody like Ted Cruz lies, or else all of us have to do it. All the people like me with little tiny audiences have to like step up. You know, but it's like we can't allow this to just spread, right? Like you have to put the only way that you can defeat misinformation is by pushing back against misinformation with the truth, you know. And it's the price of you know, that's the price of free speech, is eternal vigilance, right? You can't quit ever. Whenever people like Ted Cruz lie, you have to push back. So anyway, let's move on. I'm sorry, I'm starting to ramble some more. I know I've been rambling a lot during this particular fucking stream, but fuck it. Let's move on.
31 states prohibit ballot harvesting. Why? Because it is a corrupt practice where paid operatives handle the ballots of someone else, and it has repeatedly led to instances of stealing votes.
That's also a lie. By the way, there is really nothing inherently wrong with what they call ballot harvesting, right? You know, ballot collecting, that's basically where, you know, an operative shows up and collects your ballot for you and then goes and deposits it in a drop-off box or a polling place or something. There's really, in and of itself, nothing really wrong with that. The reason why they don't like it, of course, is because it helps people vote, and they don't like anything that helps people vote. Okay? But there have been actually instances of people, for example, you know, collecting ballots and then throwing them away, shit like that. In fact, I have an example right here of something like that happening. Let me just pull this up real fast, see if I can find it. There we go. Let's open that in a new tab. Is this going to open? And here is, I'll put this in the link down for you guys. Right? Let me just actually, let's see. Here's the article. I'm not gonna bother opening it, but article right there of a ballot harvesting scheme by Republicans in North Carolina about how they were cheating in the exact same way that Ted Cruz is talking about right here. So it's funny, you know. I think you know, this is something else that should be mentioned. All of these examples of fraud and that sort of thing that Republicans always cite as reasons for these draconian, you know, anti-voter laws, they're all, you know, you can find examples of them engaging in the exact same kind of fraud, right? All throughout, for example, the 2016 and 2020 elections, where they're talking about, like, you know, different people like voting twice or like, you know, paying people to vote, shit like that. The only examples that you ever find in the news is of Republicans doing that type of fraud. It's like, it's all projection. That's another thing too. Ted Cruz is about to project pretty hard in his speech here a little bit towards the end, so I want to get that idea, and everybody's, you know, just want to bring that up because he's about to project like super hard right towards the end of his little speech here. So let's move on.
What does this bill do? It strikes down all 31 states' restrictions on ballot harvesting.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, but it does modify it so that you can, you have the right to designate somebody else to collect your ballot, right? But it doesn't do anything like, it also removes limits on those as well. So, I don't know, maybe it does. Maybe it does remove those as well. So I'd have to actually look, you know, at some of the individual laws that would be affected by that. But once again, it's like ballot harvesting, as he calls it, ballot collecting in and of itself is not a corrupt practice. He's just framing it like that because it helps people vote. So
this bill turns the Federal Election Commission from a bipartisan agency into a partisan agency. Into a partisan agency controlled by Democrats. Why? Because Democrats want Chuck Schumer in charge of the Federal Election Commission. The effect of that, I will point out, will be that every Republican senator and every Republican House member...
All right. That's also true, right? And it's also something that needs to be done. Okay, so what is he talking about? The Federal Election Commission is the FEC, right? They're a board that was put in place after Watergate back in the 70s, right? And what they were supposed to do is to prevent things like Watergate from happening, okay? And what the Federal Election Commission does is that they enforce existing law. So if someone's cheating, if somebody's raising money in an illegal way, you know, or an unethical way, or something like that, you know, this is what the Federal Election Commission is supposed to do. They're supposed to investigate it. They're supposed to find out if there was any wrongdoing, you know, like, for example, if a corporation is donating more money than they're allowed to, you know, there's like certain limits on individual donors, that kind of thing. If they're circumventing those limits, stuff like that. That's what the FEC is supposed to do, right? And I don't think it started out as a bipartisan 6-member committee, right? But it is now. And what happens is that since it's a bipartisan committee with 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, is that basically for the last 30 some odd years, the Republicans have just blocked everything that the commission tries to do, right? The Republicans have blocked it, so they just block it every time they try to investigate somebody, you know, like for example, I don't know, Donald Trump, you know, collecting money for his inauguration campaign, you know, and then like basically pocketing the cash, shit like that. And it's not just Donald Trump, but it's like, you know, every politician. Like, for example, a politician coordinating with a super PAC when you're not supposed to. That's a perfect example, right? Politician creating their own super PAC, you know, and then like having the super PAC raise money because super PACs are not like subject to the same laws, the same like donation limits as a political campaign is. And then after they lose the election, all that money disappears. And it's like, where did that money go? Nobody knows, right? Stuff like that, you know. They're not able to investigate these things because the Republicans block it. And so they've essentially just made the FEC toothless for the last, like, 40 years, right? So that's the point. That's the problem, is that nothing ever gets done. You know, nothing ever gets done. Nobody ever gets investigated. Nobody ever goes to fucking jail. And it's sort of because it's like leaving the fox to run the hen house, right? And it's specifically, you know, Republicans blocking it on the FEC. And this has been a problem for decades. I mean, I remember people talking about this shit back in the fucking Clinton administration in the 90s. People were talking about this shit. So at least back then, right? And so, you know, what this does is that this will make it a 5-member committee, right? And yes, controlled by Democrats. You know why? Because the Democrats won the fucking election, right? That's why it'll be controlled by Democrats, right? Because elections have consequences, Ted Cruz, okay? And, you know, if you don't like it, then next time you need to fucking work harder and actually win, right? But I think what he says here next is very telling. So, you know, listen to this next little word. Let me just kind of go back like 10 seconds and listen to what he says next.
Point out will be that every Republican senator and every Republican Federal Election Commission, the effect of that, I will point out, will be that every Republican senator and every Republican House member will be investigated, will be fined, will be prosecuted by the Federal Election Commission. By the way, if this bill were to pass and miraculously Democrats were to lose power, and this is designed to make it impossible for Democrats to lose power, I ask you for a moment, which Democrat on this committee would want a Federal Election Committee controlled by Senator McConnell? Because I guarantee you, every Democrat would then be investigated and prosecuted, and the Federal Election Commission shouldn't be a partisan weapon designed to win elections.
Did you hear that? Did you hear the projection that he just said right there? Okay. If Republicans win, then they would use the Federal Election Commission in order to investigate every single Democrat, right? Find them, throw them in prison. Did you hear that? Did you hear the projection there? It's like, this is what we'll do to you. We don't want you to be able to do. So the Federal Election Commission is supposed to investigate fraud, right? It's supposed to investigate, like, when they break election law. So if you don't, and the first thing he says is that every Republican will be investigated. Well, so what? So what if they are, right? Good. They should be investigated, right? And you know what? If they didn't do anything, they'll be fine. Okay? And that's the thing. These are politicians. We should not trust politicians, because that's what I'm going to get back from people. They're going to be like, well, if they didn't do anything wrong, we shouldn't be going, it's a witch hunt, blah, 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 blah. It's a witch hunt, right? We shouldn't be making probes into their dealings without any probable cause. No, fuck that. Bullshit. No. Right? We should always investigate every politician. All the time, constantly. They should constantly, always automatically be investigated. Right? Because it is in the public's best interest to make sure these people aren't breaking the law. Right? Because, yeah, exactly. That's true. That's what it should be. Okay? It should be like, as soon as you get elected, an investigation should be opened into your finances immediately to make sure everything's on the up and up. Right? To make sure you didn't break any laws, to make sure you didn't steal any campaign donations. Right? You didn't use them to fucking, like, fly your pet bunny rabbit, like, across the country on the public fucking dime in, like, a first class seat or some shit like that. Right? That should automatically be a thing. Right? And and just listen to what he said right there. If we had this power, this is what we would do to you. Okay? And I like it, I like how that sneaks right through, and he says it with a straight face. Kind of like, you'll do this to us. It's like, fuck you, dude. Like, how do you respond to that? That's the slimiest fucking thing that I think this guy has said so far. Like, we'll do this to you. So we don't want you to have the ability to do this to us. It's like, how about this, Ted Cruz? How about you follow the fucking law? How about that? You slimy piece of shit. It's like, it's disgusting. It's absolutely fucking, it's disgusting as fuck. It's like the guy doesn't have any integrity. He has so little integrity that shit like that flies out of his mouth, and he doesn't even realize what he's saying. He doesn't even realize what he said, how slimy what he just said makes him sound. How it makes him sound, right? And the thing is, his people that are watching this shit at home, it's going to go right over their fucking heads. Because they don't have any integrity either. This is what we're dealing with, folks. This is why the country is so fucked up. Okay? Because people like this are in charge. Alright? If my boss said that to me, I'd consider getting a new job. I'd be like, if my boss said something that slimy and backwards and underhanded, and just if he was just so blissfully unaware of how shitty he sounded when he said shit like that, I would seriously consider getting another job. Because I'd be like, this is a guy that's going to fucking step on me when the opportunity arises. He's just going to kick me to the curb if it benefits him. That's exactly what that says, right? That says, I don't give a shit about anybody but myself. so far the fact, and I don't care about, you know, the actual rules or integrity or the rule of law or anything like that. I don't give a fuck about any of that stuff, right? All I care about is like what benefits me. That's what that says to me. And if that was my boss at my job, I would seriously get a new job. I'd be like, or you know, I would be ready to get fired at like any given moment, as soon as it benefited him to fire me, right, or lay me off or some shit. Seriously, it's zero fucking integrity from this guy. Ah, fuck, man. Mouth is like, god damn it. I think this whole stream. All right, I'll try not to make this entire stream all about Ted Cruz, because there was another guy I wanted to talk about after this, but I don't know if we'll have time to get to him. Right, but let's move on. There was another dude, in defense of racism guy. Let's see if we have a chance to get to him. Let's move on here.
This legislation is profoundly dangerous, and the reason it suppresses millions of votes is by allowing millions of people to vote illegally. And that is the intended effect, and that would be the actual effect of this bill. It dilutes the legal votes of American citizens. Senator Schumer said, and I wrote this...
Yeah, it does no such thing. Right. What is he talking about right there? You know, allowing millions of people to vote illegally. Like, how? How exactly? How the fuck does this... It doesn't make any sense, what he's saying. Right? Nowhere in this bill, you know, does it allow illegal people who are not citizens to vote. Right? Nowhere does it allow people who don't have, you know, the ability to vote, like, say, people who are too young to vote, right? It does allow for ways in which ex-felons can regain their right to vote, but it doesn't automatically say everyone who's an ex-felon gets to vote, you know? No, it doesn't do anything like that at all, you know? It doesn't allow people who are dead to vote, right? It doesn't do any shit like that at all. So what are you talking about when you say illegal voting? You know, what he really means is, you know, what they're really saying is it allows people who will vote against Republicans. That's what it says. You know, it dilutes Republican votes with votes of people who normally would have their right to vote suppressed. That's what he's really saying. You know, reading between the lines there, that's what he's really talking about. You know, is that, yeah, but he keeps, because he's mentioned that like 3 or 4 times in this like little speech here, you know, like is designed to keep, you know, to allow Democrats to win every election. Yeah, it's designed to help more people vote. And more people voting means Democrats win. That's what he's really fucking afraid of here, so.
Down the stench of oppression. When Democrats drafted Jim Crow the last time, well, the stench of oppression is here again. Senator Schumer said, the eyes of history.
Who is it oppressing? That's the other thing. Who the fuck, what is this bill oppressing? Exactly. Who? Where, because, you know, in order to oppress someone, you have to take away rights. Is that not right? Am I wrong there? You know, usually when you give somebody rights and privileges, that's kind of the opposite of oppression, right? So who's being oppressed? Republican voters? Republican voters are being oppressed how? How? Because more people are allowed to vote. Just the twisted fucking lie. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. You know, so it like hurts my head trying to make sense of his fucking lies. It's like, it's despicable. Every fucking word. Like, seriously, it's been 4 minutes in the video. And we've been talking about this shit for an hour so far. Right? We started at 11:30. An hour and a half to talk about 4 fucking minutes. That's how many lies are packed into this shit. Moving on.
History are on you. The eyes of history are on you as well. And let me point out something. It was just a few years ago that Republicans had control of the White House, the Senate, and the House. We didn't do this. We didn't try to change the election rules so that Democrats could never be elected.
Yeah, you didn't have to. Right. They didn't have to because the rules were already set up in order to help Republicans. Okay. And that's something that we got to remember. Like, yes, he was correct. You know, they did own all three branches of government. And, you know, in that election in 2016, right, more people voted for, more Democrats, right, voted in that election than Republicans, right? More Democrats voted for senators, right? More Democrats voted for Democratic senators, for Democratic House reps. More Democrats voted for the Democratic candidate for president in 2016. By far, 3 million more. 3 million more people voted for Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump in that election. But Donald Trump won, right? The Republicans won. You know, they won. They had a majority in the House. They had a majority in the Senate. How? How does that fucking work? How does it work that where more people vote for your opposition yet you win? It's because the system is already set up to benefit them, right? The reason why they won is through gerrymandering. You know, through decades of you know, because they happened to control the fucking House in 2010, and they were able to draw the map in such a, because every 10 years, you know, you get to redraw the district maps. They got to draw the map in such a way that it benefited them, right? They got to do it again last year, so you know this is gonna fuck us for another 10 years because they got to do it again last year, you know, because they were in control that year too in 2020, right? And that's how, you know, 3 million more Democrats, right, can vote for Democratic House reps and Democratic senators, and yet the Republicans can win both of those chambers, right? The Electoral College is already set up to benefit them as well. You know, I don't like that purple. Let's make that darker. You know, the Electoral College is set up to benefit Republicans and conservatives also. You know, I mean, this time around for Biden, it was 8 million people, and that's how much it takes for, you know, one side to win, right? Just because of the way the states are set up and the way the Electoral College is set up. You know, you need like the Democrats need a massively gigantic victory. Like 8 million people is gigantic. That's a lot of people, all right? That's not just like, and you know, the thing is, if you look at the map, right? If you look at the actual map, it's like Biden barely won, you know? He still had, you know, all he really only won by a couple of, you know, 100,000 votes in a few key states. If those things would have flipped in you know, Wisconsin and Arizona and Michigan, if those states, a couple 100,000 votes in each of those states would have flipped, Donald Trump would have won. And, you know, Biden still would have had, you know, something like 8 million more people that voted for him. Right? And, you know, the person with the least number of votes would have won the election. Again. Okay, so it's like, no, fuck you, Ted Cruz, right? The system is already fucking set up to help, you know, to help the minority. In this case, the minority is conservatives, right? It's to help them win the fucking election, right? It's already set up. So, you know, you didn't have to change anything so that Republicans never lose. Okay, because fuck it, it's already set up like that. He's so full of shit. He's so completely full of shit. You know, you ever see those maps where like they'll you know, it'll be a conservative meme. Well, they'll show a map and it's like, you know, it'll show all the counties in the country and how many of the counties were red, and it's like it completely ignores the fact that, like, you know, more people live in the cities. Like, all the actual population, the actual fucking people live in the cities. Like, it's the same shit. It's like, you know, how the fuck is it democracy when you're basing who wins elections on geography and not the actual, like, people who vote? How the fuck does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense. You know, our voting system is really fucking antiquated. It needs to be rehauled. You know, we really need to, like, we need to get rid of the fucking Electoral College is what we fucking need to get rid of. That would be one step. And actually, we need to get rid of, like, gerrymandering, too. Seriously, those are the two things. If we don't, until we have those things, we don't really have democracy in this country. So, moving on. I know, he's so full of shit. God.
We didn't engage in the corruption to say, we're going to rig the game. So if the voters decide to throw the bums out, the voters don't get the right to do that because we're going to put our thumb on the scale so that only our party wins. To my knowledge, not a single Republican suggested doing that.
Yeah, Republicans do that all the time, by the way. Constantly, right? Not just with voter suppression, you know, because that's the main method by which they do this is by suppressing votes, right? Throwing people off of voter rolls. You know, that's in Georgia, like that's really the only reason why Brian Kemp won the election, right? Like Stacey Abrams should be the fucking governor of Georgia right now. You know, the only reason she lost is because Brian Kemp was he was the Secretary of State, you know, in charge of running the election that he was running in. He was in charge of facilitating that election that he was a candidate in. That right there shouldn't have been allowed, you know. So he just went and just kicked off a bunch, you know, something like 50,000 people out of key districts where only, you know, where black people voted. And that won him the fucking election. So that shit happens all the time, right? But, you know, the thing is about Republicans using, you know, if you want to consider using your power, your elected power for your own benefit, if that falls under the same umbrella as ensuring your opposition loses, Republicans do that all the fucking time. Constantly. All the time. You know? I have some fucking examples here. You know, like, for example, in 2016, right, in West Virginia, in 2016, right, let me find, okay, I have this all written down here. The state legislature, controlled by Republicans, went and impeached all of the Democratic members of the state Supreme Court in West Virginia. Right? So basically, the Republicans, you know, they ran the House, the state House in West Virginia, and they ran the Senate in West Virginia, and the only thing that they didn't have control of was the Supreme Court in West Virginia. So they just decided we're just going to kick out all of the Democrats that are on the Supreme Court and impeach them all, so that the governor can appoint new ones. Right? And it's like, there you go, this blatant fucking power grab. And they made up some phony baloney bullshit about how they were using state funds to buy furniture or some shit like that. And it was like the most transparent, like, bullshit, like, because that's the thing, it's not even against the law to do that, you know? It's not even against the law to use state funds to furnish your office. Right? Like, what do you have to, like, buy your own fucking furniture if you're a you know, Supreme Court judge in West Virginia? What kind of shit is that? It's unbelievable. So, perfect example. In 2018, after the midterms in Wisconsin, right? The governor, you know, the governorship went to Democrats in 2018 in Wisconsin. So the Republican-controlled legislature there just passed a law stripping away all of the power from the governor. You know, basically, like, just removed him, you know, basically, like, took out anything that was important that the governor can do. And it was like this massive fucking power grab, right? To, like, weaken him. Since they couldn't win, we'll just make him ineffectual. We'll make it so he can't pass anything. And they made it really easy to, like, veto any like, override any vetoes, shit like that, you know. And it wasn't just there. Like, the same thing happened in Michigan and in Georgia. And in 2016, they tried the same thing in California also. Just, you know, if you can't win the election, then just weaken the guy that actually wins if he's not on your side, right? In 2019, in Oregon, there was this climate change bill that passed, right? Or it was about to pass, this climate change bill that was about to pass. Hang on, I need some water here. It was coming to vote, and the Republicans in the state legislature in Oregon didn't have enough votes to stop it. So instead of actually, doing their democratic duty, they decided to just all skip town, right? And they to prevent a quorum from happening. So if you don't have enough people, you need a quorum, right? If you don't have enough people, then you can't hold the vote, right? In certain places, right? Certain states. So they all just bailed, right, to prevent the vote from happening. So the governor in Oregon, right, has the power. There's a law that says the governor is allowed to send the state police to go retrieve legislatures if they try to do this particular maneuver, right? And the legislature, so the Republicans then went and they got some fucking militia groups, right? And like, the Oath Keepers stood up and basically said, anybody, any cops who come and try to like force these legislators to go vote, as is the law, right? We're gonna like open fire on them, right? And the vote never ended up happening because of that. So the governor backed down because she didn't want to cause a fucking massacre, right? And they never passed the law. And it's like, there you go, right there. It's like there's an instance where they even had the votes, the Democrats had the votes, they won, they were gonna win, and the Republicans just did this fucking like snaky ass maneuver, right? And then got like a fucking terrorist group to like, domestic terrorist group to like fucking defend them from the police. So there you go. Here's another one. In North Carolina, right? So North Carolina actually has where they can actually hold votes without having a quorum, right? In 2019, on September 11th, right, they decided we weren't going to have any votes on September 11th. So the Republicans say, okay, no votes scheduled for that day, right? So the Democrats go off and they have this event because it's September 11th. So they have remembering our troops and remembering the September 11th tragedy kind of event, right? And while the Democrats are off doing this event, speaking with people, shit like that, the Republicans sneak into the legislature and hold a vote to a half-empty fucking house, right? And they used it to override a budget veto from the governor, who happens to be a Democrat. So basically, they said, yeah, hey, we have no votes scheduled for September 11th. And then when the Democrats went off to do their thing, they snuck in and then fucking like overrode a veto. And which is like, I don't understand how shit like that even counts. Like after, it's like, oh, so then they hold the vote to a half-empty house. How does that count? How do you not like, I don't understand. Isn't there some way that you could just call bullshit from that? I guess not. I guess that's just they used procedure, right? So that's some sneaky fucking shit, And a really good example of this, a really good example of how, at the federal level, of the Republicans using their power to benefit themselves, right? Playing political games in the way that Ted Cruz says that they never do, is Mitch McConnell holding back Merrick Garland's Supreme Court seat for a year. Not holding a vote for a year, right, to allow Merrick Garland to get appointed to the Supreme Court, right? And then, when fucking Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies, pushing through Amy Coney Barrett in 3 weeks. So it's like, oh, we're not gonna, do you remember the excuse? Do you remember what it was? It was because there was an election coming, and he said, we're gonna allow the people to decide, with their election, whether or not who gets the Supreme Court, right? And then, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies and there's an election coming like a month later, he just pushes Amy Coney Barrett through because, it was a lie. Because it was a lie to begin with. It was complete and total bullshit. And he just straight up lied to people. And here's the thing about that. The Republicans like it. All these things that I just said, all these little ways in which they cheat and they lie and they use, political maneuvers to do the exact thing that fucking Ted Cruz said they don't do, right? They like it. Their constituents like these things. They hear about, you know, the Republicans, like, for example, Mitch McConnell, you know, fucking, like, politicizing the Supreme Court, stealing a fucking seat like that, and they like it. Okay? This is what they want. All right? You know, you and I, you know, someone with actual integrity sees that and they're disgusted by it. You know? And if I saw the same thing, if Chuck Schumer did that same fucking thing, then I would hate Chuck Schumer. Okay? Because it's bullshit. That's not how it's supposed to work. All right? We have this process in place for a reason. And it has to go both fucking ways, right? But you got to remember, you know, people like Ted Cruz, people like Mitch McConnell, they don't have integrity. They don't care about rules, right? They don't actually give a fuck about, you know, all they care about is winning. All they give a fuck about is their own fucking power. All right? So Ted Cruz literally does not give a shit, you know, about any of this stuff. He's only fucking saying it because it threatens his own power. It's something you got to remember. He's lying to you. He's lying, and it's like, because you can find, you know, and you can find 100 fucking, and I'm sure there's plenty of examples of the kind of shit I'm saying where Democrats have done the same thing. I couldn't find any. It seems to be harder to find those examples, right? But I'm sure there's some out there. It just seems to be that, you know, the Republicans do it so often and get away with it all the fucking time. And it's like, it makes me, you know, when you hear somebody like Ted Cruz say shit like this, which is blatantly fucking untrue, it's enraging. It's enraging how false and wrong it is and how nobody gives a shit, you know? I really do not like Ted Cruz. I don't know if you noticed. I fucking hate his ass. Moving on.
This bill doesn't protect voting rights.
Yes, it does.
It steals voting rights from the American people. In the course of this markup, I expect that we're going to consider a number of amendments. I've introduced 46 amendments focused on substantive elements of this bill.
46 amendments? Seriously? I couldn't find out what any of these 46 amendments were. I tried to look, I couldn't find them online. I'm sure they're out there somewhere. That is a stalling, like a delaying tactic, by the way. He put in 46 amendments. Why? Because it draws out the process, right? The longer you can draw the process out, the more likely it'll get stalled in committees. It'll take years, and even if this legislation does get passed, it does go to a vote, shit like that, then it might not be enacted for years to come. That's the goal. So when he's putting in 46 amendments, right? Just remember that. That's his goal is to slow it down. It's to extend the debate as long as fucking possible. Nobody puts 46 fucking amendments in. You know what I mean? Like, you know what you could do? You could just put all those amendments together into one and introduce it like that. You know? But he doesn't actually give a shit. See, that you got to remember. He doesn't actually give a shit about what he's even proposing. He doesn't actually care. He doesn't think any of his amendments will actually pass anyway, so they're not actually there to make the bill better. They're there to slow down the process, right? Because the longer he can slow it down, the more likely the bill gets watered down. If it does pass, it'll be watered down, and most likely it probably won't pass it anyway. That's the whole fucking point. He's a slimy, lying to your face right there. Again, every fucking sentence this guy says in this 6 minutes is a fucking lie. It's disgusting.
We're going to discuss each aspect of this bill and how they disenfranchise the American voters, but sadly, I expect to see a lot of play acting. All Democrats voting against those amendments, all Republicans voting for them. Because this bill isn't designed to be bipartisan. This bill was drafted to get 0 Republican votes. It got 0 Republican votes in the House, and it was drafted to get 0 Republican votes in the Senate.
You know what else got 0 Republican votes? Pretty much anything that's popular when a Democrat is in charge, you know. The stimulus did not get any Republican votes, right? What's funny is that when, you know, Trump was in charge and when he did stimuluses, there was plenty of Democratic votes for those. Biden does a stimulus, 0 Republican votes. You know. You know what else got 0 Republican votes too? The ACA, Obamacare. 0 Republican votes. Okay. Even though the ACA is the conservative version of a healthcare bill. That's another thing. I always bring this up because it's true. The ACA it's basically what the conservatives consider. That's their alternative to a Medicare for all style type thing. What we have now with the ACA is the conservative version of Medicare for all, where you have to actually go and buy it. It's the conservative version of a national health care bill, right? Giving money to private insurers, right? That was based on Romney Care, right? Originally proposed by the Heritage Foundation. They all voted against that too, right? Even though it's the shit that they proposed, they all voted against that too because a Democrat was the one who was in charge, right? So if anybody plays fucking politics, it's Republicans. Like Ted Cruz is saying right here, I look to see plenty of playing politics. Yeah, if anybody plays fucking politics, Ted Cruz, it's you and your fucking party. You lying, weasel-faced, human-shaped sack of fucking donkey turds. That's what he is.
Why? Because it's not about protecting anyone's rights. It's about ensuring one party's dominance at the expense of the voting rights of the American people. And by the way, the history of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, landmark victories for voting rights in this country, it was the Republican Party that led the fight to pass those amendments.
Yeah, 200 fucking years ago, right? That's it. One last thing here. If those amendments were up today, would Republicans be voting for them? No, they wouldn't. Okay, they would not be voting for them. They'd be saying the same shit that Ted Cruz is saying right now, right? And that's the thing, is that even back then, those were the same arguments. The idea that it's diluting our when they first gave black people the right to vote back then, when they first enfranchised them with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, things like that, right? When they first gave women the right to vote, these were the same fucking arguments that you got from the conservatives at that time, who just happened to be Democrats. The exact same arguments. It's going to dilute our right to vote. It's going to allow millions of illegal voters, right? It takes away the right to vote from, from real citizens, from real Americans, shit like that. They said all the exact same fucking things, right? And it just, because conservatives don't have any new ideas. They don't have solutions, right? And it's like the arguments they have are decades, in some cases even centuries old. It's the same shit over and over and over again, just dressed up for a new fucking a new generation. Right? It's pathetic. It's pathetic, And the real pathetic thing about it is that all of Ted Cruz's fucking constituents don't research this shit, and so they don't know. Let's turn this fucking thing off. Let's get rid of this. Right. Hang on. I need to go into here, and I need to turn off that Chrome thing. There we go. Right. Finally fucking done. Sorry, I know that took 2 hours by itself. Right? I guess that was our entire stream, was just yelling at Ted Cruz there. Right? But I think it's important, I think it's important because that right there, that 6-minute speech, right, had so many lies packed into it. It was it wasn't even funny how many times he fucking lied. And it came so naturally to this guy, And that's what I mean. It was he doesn't have to, what a politician, I kind of touched on this a little earlier in the stream. Politicians don't have to tell the truth, in order to convince people. They don't have to say things that are true. They don't even have to say shit that has any kind of substance at all, They just have to sound like they know what they're talking about, and people will buy it. You know what I mean? And that's true. That's how people win debates. That's how politicians win debates. It's not on the substance, right? It's on who sounds better. You know, it's all about image. It's all about. This is partially why I don't debate people. Like once in a while, I'll get a an offer from some guy, some fucking chud will come up and they'll want to debate me on libertarianism or something like that. You know, I've considered doing it, but usually I decide against it, and it's because debates don't actually change people's minds because of facts and reality and, you know, that kind of thing, right? You know, it really doesn't matter when you're debating somebody if what your side has any, you know, integrity or truth to it, or if the facts are on your side. It doesn't matter. Of course, it helps, right? And afterwards, if anybody actually takes the time to examine what you say, right, that's always good. Okay. But, you know, it really doesn't matter as far as convincing somebody whether or not what the shit you're saying is actually true, right? What matters is how you come off, right? How do you look when you say it? Are you confident when you say it? Are you able to outwit your opponent when you're debating them? Are you able to, like, you know, if they attack you with a certain thing, are you able to sufficiently counterattack and make the other guy look bad and, like, you know, make yourself look good? You know, because it's all about emotion. It's like people will follow someone that they think knows what they're talking about, even if they're spouting bullshit. You know, this is how cults and shit start, right? This is how multi-level marketing schemes get off the ground. This is how scam artists work. You know what I mean? You meet some fucking scammy dude who's got a, like, you know, he's got a business opportunity for you, and he makes it sound like the best fucking thing in the world, and you buy into it because, well, this guy's confident, he knows what he's doing. He's rich, he's got a Ferrari, whatever. He must know what he's doing. This furry trout farm must have something to it. Blah, 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 blah. Same fucking thing. Same way that a cult starts. Some fucking guru shows up, starts spouting a bunch of stupid horseshit, whatever. And people look at him and say, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's great. He speaks to me. Right? It's all about emotion. You know, everything, especially when it comes to politics, it's all about emotion. And it's like, it really should not be about emotion. Right? It really shouldn't be, you know. Politics, who you vote for, the policies that you support, you know, things like that should not be about emotion. And I even admit me, myself personally, a little bit is also about emotion as well. You know, I'm not above, this is a bias. I'm not above this bias. You know, I will probably never vote Republican ever again as long as I live. I think I voted Republican once in, like, fucking, you know, God, I can't even remember. I think it was like 1990. I think like the very first election ever, I voted for Bob Dole or some shit. I can't remember, right? But, you know, I'll probably never vote Republican ever again as long as I ever fucking live now. And a lot of that comes from, you know, my emotional response. They've soured their brand on me. You know what I mean? Like, the Democrat would have to be seriously like a fucking pedophile or some shit before I'll vote for Republican. Right. And that's, you know, and I understand that's a lot of that has to do with, you know, my emotional attachment. But it just so happens in this case that, you know, the facts also match up with my emotional response. You know, I don't, my emotional response says people like Ted Cruz are cheats, liars, and trolls. And that just happens to be the facts. You know what I mean? But, you know, that's also something you got to understand. You got to understand it's like it's a bias. We need to look past that bias. You know, if the Democrat that they put forward is a warmongering, two-faced, like, piece of fucking garbage who's going to destroy the country, we have to face reality. We have to be like, okay, you know, this is who he is. You know, this is you know, we shouldn't defend people just because it feels good. You know. The same way that we shouldn't just instantly be against people just because it feels good. We have to look at the actual facts. We have to look at what they actually stand for, shit like that. And it's like, that's the thing that, Republicans do not do that at all, in the slightest. Nobody who watched that speech, even if they bothered to watch it, because first off, you got to remember, like, Republican constituents, conservatives and shit, they don't watch that, what we just watched. They're not going to watch that, They don't watch the news, they don't watch things like congressional speeches. They don't give a shit about any of that stuff. They really honestly do not care whatever Ted Cruz says, whatever Mitch McConnell says, whatever their fucking president says at the time when they're president, whatever. They don't pay attention to shit like this, right? They get their news from fucking like Fox and One American Network, and then also Facebook. That's where they get their fucking news from. So the only information, they're not even going to see what we just saw. Like, probably none of them will, unless it's on, like, unless Ben Shapiro or some shit, like, has it on his show. Right? So that's the other thing. It's like, even when, like, they won't even get this information. Even when, like, for example, Ted Cruz gets caught fleeing to Mexico when his, like, fucking, when his state is, like, freezing solid and people are dying in his, like, fucking district and they need his help and he's bailing to another country, the conservatives are not even going to, like, be aware of that because the news they consume is not even going to cover that shit. So this is why it's important. This is why, I think it's important to cover these types of things, right? To spread awareness of just how bad, because we all know politicians are thieves and liars and trolls. Fascist trolls and liars. That's why I named it this. We all know this is true. That needs reinforcing sometimes. Just how fucking bad exactly are these people? Right? We can't let it get complicit. We can't let it, we can't let things, because things like this fall down the memory hole. Donald Trump did shit that, like, people have forgotten. There's been so much of it, people forgot. People forgot now how when the pandemic started, for example, right, Donald Trump emptied out the strategic stockpile and gave it all to Jared Kushner so that he could sell it. And then Jared Kushner was, like, putting it up, and the states had to bid on it fucking eBay style for, like, stuff. Then even when the states would occasionally, like, win it, then Jared Kushner would just get the, the fucking, like, Secret Service to go and confiscate it from them after they won it so that he could, like, turn around and basically sell it at a profit. People forget that shit. So, like, they forget, like, for example, there was a story how the governor of Colorado had to smuggle in fucking N95 masks from China, right? Because the fucking customs of, the customs and the Secret Service were, like, confiscating any, like, shipments of like PPE that were coming into the country, right? Even when, like, the states actually bid on them legitimately and won them. It was, people forget, and how many people died because of this incredibly bad handling of that stuff. Is Jared Kushner going to prison for that shit? No, he's not. He should be in jail for that. Just for that alone should be enough to throw him in fucking prison for that. There has to be some laws that got broken there. Right? But people forget about that. People forget about it, and and now they're probably gonna fucking, like, try to run Trump again to be president again in 2024. Right? It's like, no, we need to remind people of this stuff, and we need to like continuously demonstrate just how bad they fucking are. Don't let people forget, how slimy these sons of bitches actually are. How much of a piece of shit somebody like Ted Cruz or Matt Gaetz or, Donald Trump, right? Or Mitch McConnell, like, or fucking any of these people. Let's not let them ever forget who these people actually fucking are, because it gets really easy, because it's really easy to forget and to brush things under the rug, and to have them, like, fall in the memory hole, shit like that. It's really easy to forget these things, when you live in the 24-hour news cycle like this, right? And when it's one scandal after another, You know, you tend to forget. So, anyway. Okay, well, this stream was just 2 hours of me just ranting and raving like a madman. Sorry, I had to get this shit off my chest, you know. There was another guy I wanted to talk about. There's this dude called, what the fuck was this guy's name? There was another guy I wanted to talk about who put out a video called Why We Need Racism. His name was Achilles Argyle. I might do that just as a video during the course of the week, if not the stream for next week. I'm going to try to get back to the normal shit for the next stream. You know, I want to talk about the KKK in particular, history of the Ku Klux Klan, because we've kind of gone through different hate groups and stuff, and, you know, they're kind of like the biggest hate group that we have in the country, so I think we should talk about them before we move on to the alt-right. So I'll probably do that, and I'll probably make a video maybe in around Tuesday or Wednesday, because this dude, and I'll put this down, if you guys haven't seen this, let me just copy this. I'll put it down. Here's the video that I'm talking about that I want to address too. It's pretty fucking egregious, and you know, usually I don't make these types of video responses, but the thing that this guy said is like, it's the same kind of thing. It's this Gish Gallopy sort of like every fucking word this guy says is wrong, and it needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed. You know, I know, and there are things that, you know, you shouldn't let people get away without speaking your mind. When somebody says stuff like this, when somebody lies, when they promote hate, you know, this is our job. At least I think so. As you know, our job as the opposition is to make our opinions known. You know what I mean? So I think I'll probably do that on either on Tuesday or Wednesday. I'll probably make that video. But why don't we look at some of the comments from you guys here before we end this, because we're going on almost 2.5 hours here. So why don't we read some of the comments, and then we'll go ahead and call it a day. Let me see here. Lewis the Hedgehog. Dole ran in '96. Yeah, I was. That was the first election I ever voted in. I turned 18 in '94, I think. So, yeah, I voted in the 1996 election, and I think I voted for Bob Dole, just because of Clinton was kind of the, you know. I think so. I'm pretty sure I did, and I think that's the last time I ever voted for a Republican in my life. I was 20. I think I was 20. Yeah, I might have been. It was either 19 or 20 when that election ran in 1996. Yeah, never again. Never again will I ever vote for a Republican ever for even dog catcher. And probably because, you know, unless it's demonstrated to me that the Democrat that's running is like literally Satan himself. You know, like if there is a picture of the Democrat like stepping on a kitten, I might consider voting for the Republican. Like that's how bad it would have to be, because their brand has just been soured on me, you know. And I'm not saying that Democrats are the best people ever, or that they're never criminals, or that they never lie, or whatever, any shit like that. Obviously they fucking do. I mean, you know, Bill Clinton was a perfect example of a liar, scumbag fucking politician, you know, especially Hillary Clinton. But I will say that I did vote for Hillary Clinton, though, in 2016, so maybe that makes up for my my vote there. Right. I'm not saying Democrats are the best people ever, you know, but they are consistently the better choice. And they just have been, like, in my entire life. I mean, and I know it always hasn't been like that. You know, political parties are just arbitrary, you know, and the stances that any particular politician has changes, and you know, what the parties stand for have switched over the years, shit like that, blah, 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 blah. It just happens just in pretty much every election since then, they've been the lesser of the two evils. And it's, even in this one, even in 2020, you know, Joe Biden is not the perfect person. You know, I wanted somebody like Bernie Sanders instead, and it's like, you know, oh, wait a minute, that should be the other way. Fuck it. Right. No, you know what? That should be the other. This needs to be lighter, not darker like that. There we go. But you know, and I wish it really wasn't like that. I wish I wouldn't. I wish I didn't have to vote for the lesser of the two evils. You know, but it's sort of like it's irresponsible, like to vote for the guy that you know to allow the person that you know will be more detrimental for the country. It seems to me it's irresponsible to just not vote. You know, because that's what the other alternative is that people will just decide not to vote. You know, they both suck. They're both horrible. They're both the same. Blah 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 blah. I really don't believe that. I don't believe they're both the same. You know, in any election that we've had in the last. I mean, the closest ones that you could say where both candidates were the same was probably 2004 with Bush versus Kerry. That's probably the closest one that I can think of in my lifetime where you could say both candidates were the same. You know, because everyone after that, they kind of haven't been. You know, Obama McCain, no. Obama Romney, hell no. Jesus Christ, right? Clinton Trump, no. I think that kind of history is borne out on that. You know, Donald Trump has been way fucking worse for the country. You know, Bush Gore, 2000, hell no. Can you imagine if Al Gore actually became the president? You know, if the person who actually got the most number of votes in that election actually became the president, right? Can you imagine what life would be like today? There would have been no war in Iraq, right? There'd be no Syrian refugee crisis in Europe right now because that there wouldn't have been there would be no fucking ISIS now. I mean, the world would be a much different place if we didn't have George W. Bush as president, right? A lot of shit happened, all of the different implications that happened from the Iraq War, like everything from the Arab Spring all the way to the massive amount of fucking debt we have right now, $20 trillion in fucking debt, the Patriot Act, shit like that. Yeah, 9/11 still probably would have happened, right? But our response to it would have been way different. And we'd be living in a much different country, or a much different world right now. And frankly, millions of people who are dead would probably be alive, right now. Indirectly as a result of George W. Bush getting elected. Millions of people around the fucking world are dead now. And that's just one example. That's one example of how, elections and the elections specifically in the United States have consequences for the entire world, and why it's important to get the right person in there. Who even knows what the consequences of the Trump presidency are going to be? Right? Who even fucking knows? Anyway, so kind of went off on a tangent there. Let's start at the top. At the top, Dana Cat. Well, that pipeline was going to happen. Biden can't stop it, but he can piss off the Germans. Trump couldn't stop it either, but he wanted to piss off the Germans. Are you talking about the pipeline for the one that just got approved, the Russian pipeline? Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I don't know. I mean, if that's true, then yeah, okay, maybe he couldn't stop it. I don't think Biden really tried that hard to stop it, to be honest, because it's like he's not really an environmentalist. I think Biden's had some environmental policies that he's enacted, and the reason he enacted them, I think, is to appease the left wing. I think what we're seeing is, I think what Biden's trying to do is he's trying to get the Bernie supporters on his side, right? Because he realizes correctly that they're the ones that got him elected. And in 2024, if he doesn't have the Bernie people on his side, he's going to lose. If he doesn't have the young people, the Bernie supporters are the younger constituents, right? Biden won in 2020 because of young people. Young people went out for him and they voted against Donald Trump, right? And chances are it's probably going to be Trump again, but there's also chances that Trump, is too old or too sick to not run, whatever. right? But, you know, 4 years does a lot to people's memories, and a lot of people aren't going to remember how bad Trump actually was, you know? I mean, you got to remember 4 years is like, especially when it comes to young people, someone who was 14 in 2020 will be 18 in 2024, and they'll be voting for the first time. And when you're 14, you don't pay attention to politics, and so they're going to be voting based on personality, you know. And so Biden is betting on more of those people will be, you know, because that's kind of the way the trend has been. The trend has been more of those people have gone to the Bernie, you know, the far left, the farther, you know, that's the way it seems to be going, you know. More young people are going towards the left side. They're becoming, you know, Bernie supporters, AOC supporters, you know, kind of like young sort of like people who don't think things like socialism is like, you know, who don't think socialism is like a fucking demonic plot by satanic lizard people and shit. Right? And who actually want to see people get like, you know, universal health care, shit like that. They want to like, you know, they want to stop police violence, that kind of thing. That's what he's betting on. And so that's why I think he's doing, you know, enacting some environmental policies, trying to appeal to these people, right? So, which is good. And that's great. This is how it should be. We're pushing him to the left, essentially, right? You know, Republicans are really good with that as far as their own people. They're really good about pushing their own politicians to the right. They have been for years, you know, the Tea Party, shit like that. Maybe we need to be doing the same thing to our guys. And so I'm glad to see it's like finally fucking happening, you know. Anyway. Dynacat loves me. Canceling the votes of white racists with votes of everybody else. He's using the great replacement theory. In other words, that's my vote if worth. What's my vote worth if you let some liberal come along and vote the other way? Definitely true, you know. And that's something that's the thing we really need to fight against that. That's how the Republicans have figured they're going to win. You know, instead of, you know, and I kind of touched on this also in earlier streams too. You know, it kind of sounds like I'm repeating myself, but, you know, these things need to be, you know, I think it's worth it. We need to reiterate these things, right? You know, they're really not, you know, doing anything to help people. You know, they see the problems that the country has, you know, the right wing in this country, right? They understand that, you know, there are certain solutions we can do. They don't want to enact those solutions because it takes money and power away from them. You know, takes it away from their rich donors, their constituents, the rich donors, and also themselves. And they figure like, well, if we want to maintain our donations and we want to maintain our power, the only way that we're going to be able to do that without having to appeal to, you know, without having to actually appeal to people and propose actual real solutions is to suppress the vote, you know, because they know that when more people vote, they lose. And they've known that for decades. They've known that for a long time, since like the 70s, right? Every time when more people vote, Republicans lose. So it's kind of fucked up and sad. Let's see. What else we got here? Dynacat. Speaking of slimy, did you see the challenger to Liz Cheney impregnated a 14-year-old when he was 18? Oh, God, yes. Oh, my God. Yeah, I saw that on the Young Turks. And apparently, so the guy married her afterwards. So this is why I don't think anything is going to come out of this, you know? Because unfortunately what he did was legal. So it is illegal for an 18-year-old person to have sex with a 14-year-old. That's statutory rape, right? But it is also, but unfortunately it is legal for minors to get married in certain states as long as they have the parents' permission, right? And that's what he did. So this guy got this girl pregnant when he was, you know, an adult. And in any just world, he probably would have gone to jail for that. But instead, he married her, and then suddenly it becomes okay. And now they got divorced a few years later, and then apparently his ex-wife then killed herself, committed suicide, right? Which kind of goes to show, she wasn't very mentally, maybe, the fact that she was like married at the age of 15, taken advantage of by someone who was 4 years older than her, maybe that kind of contributed to her mental, problems there, right? To her suicidal problems. We have no way of knowing that. Kind of sounds like it might have to me, right? That's kind of fucked up, and it's like this guy's like throwing it out there, trying to get in front of it, like trying to head off any potential scandals. So I don't think so. I think I don't think that's gonna hurt him. I'll put it that way. In his, I think I mean, the people that would vote for him are probably gonna say he did the right thing. You know what I mean? Which is fucked up, but it's kind of an old-fashioned like view, like this idea, like, and you see this also a lot in other cultures, like if somebody rapes a woman and then marries her, then it's like they forgive it, you know? You see that a lot in like the Middle East and shit, and it's kind of disgusting and fucked up that that kind of thing happens in this country, you know? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. There should be a law against minors getting married in general. Minors should not be allowed to get married until they're 18. I mean, fuck it. If you can't buy a pack of cigarettes until you're 18, how the fuck can you get married? And, that's another example. Like, remember a few streams ago when I said minors don't have any rights? That's an example of how their rights are basically at the whims of their parents. It's like, oh, you can get married if your fucking parents say so. Did this girl really want to marry this guy, or was she pressured into doing it? Because that's something that used to happen all the time too. Like, you know, back in the old days, girl gets pregnant, and then like her parents would, there'd be like a shotgun wedding, essentially, is what they would call that. Her parents would force her to marry the guy that got her pregnant when she was like 16, 17, whatever. You know, that's just kind of how it was back in the day, right? So it's kind of, I mean, I'm not sure how old this guy is, but I don't know. It's kind of fucked up that that kind of thing even happens. It shouldn't be allowed to fucking happen. So anyway, that's disgusting. What else we got? My first presidential vote was for McGovern. Oh wow, really? Dang. So when was that? Like in the 60s, I think. Hmm. Is that or was that like, I don't know when, I don't even know when that was. When did McGovern run? Like 64. Wow. Right on. No, that's great. So you really, Dynacat, you really know, like, I mean, you've seen a lot then over all this year. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool to have that type of perspective. My own perspective only goes back, to the 90s or so. you know, but seeing these types, I'm sure you've probably seen these types of patterns play out over and over and over. I don't know. Do you think? I guess this is a question for you, Dynacat, since it seems like you're older than me, have more experience than I do. Has it really gotten worse? 72. Okay. Um, has the discourse really gotten worse? Because I hear from a lot of people, right, that it's like the state of political discourse in this country is like worse than it's ever been. And I'm not so sure about that, because I remember people, it seemed to me it wasn't mainstream like it is now, right? Like back in the 90s and the early aughts, when I became politically active myself, right? There was still the same type of, vitriol and like, you know what I mean? Like I saw all the same shit that we're seeing today. It just seemed to be it wasn't as mainstream as it used to be. You know what I mean? Like, and especially once the internet became a thing, and like you could go to like, you could go express your opinion anonymously on the internet. You know, that's definitely when it seemed to start getting worse. But now it seems what it is. It's like it's just the same attitudes, the same like prejudices, the same vitriol and name calling shit like that as it's always been, but now it's like mainstream. Now what it is, you have entire news networks that are dedicated straight just to like pandering to that sort of outraged voter thing. And I don't know. What do you think? Like, was it like this back in the 60s and the 70s? You know, or is this like a new phenomenon? It's louder and more obvious. There you go. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's always kind of been like that. Like, at least to me. I mean, there's always been this undercurrent of like extreme, you know what I mean? Like this extreme undercurrent underneath American political discourse. And then on the just this sort of like surface level of like decorum and you know what I mean? Seems like it's always, I don't know. Maybe it's better. Maybe it's better that it's mainstream. It's out in the open now because now we can see, you know, maybe it'll make that more obvious about what people's actual motives are, you know. Anyway, guys, I think I got to end this. It was all there, but polite people ignored it. There you go. Yeah, I guess that's probably true. All right, guys, let's take a look at where we're at here. Looking pretty good, you know, with our silly monsters. Right? I don't know if I'm digging these colors on this shirt here, but looks better. We're making progress. I should probably save this, huh? All right, guys, I got to go ahead and end this. It's been 2.5 hours this time. We had, I apologize for subjecting you guys to 2 hours of Ted Cruz there. But I think it had to be done. And I'm going to go ahead and end this. But before I do, let me just go ahead and do my usual thing where, you know, please like and subscribe, all that good stuff. You know, you got to say it every single time. And let's see, let me show you all my social media so that, you know, I got to do this every time here, folks. Oh, wait a minute. Let me just go to, there we go. All right, so this here is my SD shop. If you like what I do and you want to support me monetarily, please consider buying something from my SD shop. You know, I have prints and things up here. You know, these are all like different. Here's actually one that we did during a stream. This guy here. You know, we did this over the course of like 5 or 6 streams. So, you know, I sell these for roughly 15 bucks each. Here's another one. This is a Lovecraft character, right? Each one comes out a little unique, and if you like what I do, please consider supporting me monetarily through my SD shop there. And if you like my artwork, you can see more of my artwork on DeviantArt here. Let me just drag this over. This here is my DeviantArt site. I put up artwork here all the time. If you want to see more. I've been doing little sculptures and things like this. You know, this is a little sort of, I'm going to start selling these on the SD shop. Little disgusting parasite looking thing, you know. But I also put up, here's also, for example, the piece that we worked on over the past like 6 or 7 streams. It's all up here. So if you want to download it, you know, or if you can see it in detail, right? If you want to look at it in detail, it's up here. And you can download these too. You just have to right click on it and, you know. So that's all yours. So if you want to see my artwork, please check me out on DeviantArt. And I also have a web comic. This is at hoanja.com. Fun for the whole stupid family. It's about ninjas and demons and stuff. And should have the next page up here pretty soon. There's about to be a big ass fight scene. You know, things are about to go down. And then also, this is my other YouTube channel called UCD Videos, where I talk about toys and video games, and I do toy unboxings and movies and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm trying to post here at least once a week. So please check it out if you want to see me talk about things that are not political, non-political content. Please check me out on UCD Videos. All right, guys, so I think we're going to go ahead and end this. Thank you once again, Dynacat. Good to see you every week. Thank you, Lewis, for joining us. Lewis the Hedgehog. One Life of Gods, thank you for joining too. Really appreciate it. And I'm going to go ahead and end this. We will be back next week, most likely talking about the history of the Ku Klux Klan for our next stream. So at either 11 or 11:30 Pacific time next Saturday. All right, guys, thank you all so much, and I will see you all later. Adios.